Hello and welcome back to another video in the LLM series. Today we'll take a step back from LangChain, LlamaIndex and Chroma to visit something that's been powering a lot of the code that we've been writing, and that's the OpenAI Python library itself. Now whether you realize it or not, the LangChain library actually adds this layer of abstraction on top of the OpenAI Python library, and if you were to inspect the code base of LangChain itself as we're doing here, you'll see, unsurprisingly, that it does this OpenAI import in a few places. So we know it's a dependency, and when we install LangChain, you also have installed the OpenAI Python library. So if you're following this series, then you didn't have to do any other installation. Just activate the environment that contains LangChain and you're good to go. Otherwise, if you're new here, just put a quick pause and run pip install OpenAI and you're all set. Now we're going to do two things with the OpenAI Python library today. First, we use this command line interface to generate some text and some images to see how you can achieve some quick results almost without writing any code. Now we do the LLM first and then we do the Dall-E image generation. Once we get a feel of how the CLI works, we'll compose our Python script to do the same thing, and that's going to be a pretty adequate introduction to this OpenAI Python library. Now as always, all of the code, datasets, scripts, all of this are available on my GitHub, so feel free to just check it out, code along with me. So let's get into it. Now first, open up your favorite IDE, of course there's Visual Studio Code, and create a new file. You can just give it a name. I'm just going to call it demo10.py. You also want to use the control backtick to open up this terminal. Just control backtick would give you the shortcut to just toggle the terminal on and off. I'm just going to keep it on here because I'm going to do the experiments in the terminal. You can bring your terminal up to give yourself a bit more space. Now throughout the exercise, you will need to provide your OpenAI API keys. You can either type it out by doing the export command, so you just do an export, then you can have your OpenAI API key, then you have your API keys here. You could either do that, or if you don't like to type things out by hand every single time and you just want to import the key values, that is already in your d.env file. So if you've been following this series, you know about this env file. It's where you put your HuggingFace key, your OpenAI key, all of this stuff, right? So if you want to just bring in all of that, then a quick way to do that is to just say export, and you pass in this. You say take all the arguments and then from the .env and you direct the output over, and then you just have to say export to all of them. That will export all of the key values that you find in your env file. So if you have something like my OpenAI key, right? So pretend that I have my OpenAI key in here and I have my HuggingFace key in here. Just pretend that I have some numbers in here. Then when you do an export, it's going to take this and it's just going to export each one of these key value pairs. Okay, so run that, and to test that your env files, meaning your OpenAI keys, have actually been read, you could maybe run a quick one. And what I like to do is I like to say OpenAI API, and then I like to just list all the models that are available to me. Alright, so this is a simple command. It basically says list all the models available to me, and if you did not export the OpenAI key, then you'll be told that you need to provide an API key. But otherwise, if you did successfully run this and you managed to export all of the keys, then you will see a list of all the models available to you. So sure enough, I see a list of the OpenAI models that are available. Okay, a quick heads up. Now we're in the middle of a deep recession, so in order to save you some money, my tutorial is going to be using Ada or Babbage. So if you hop over to the pricing page, you will see there's the different language. There are a list of different language models, and you will see how much it costs you. So you see that this is the Ada, this is fastest. It costs you 0.0004 per 1000 tokens, and then there's the Babbage, there's Curie, and then there's DaVinci. And if you just make a quick napkin calculation, you see that this is a few magnitudes cheaper than DaVinci. So DaVinci is definitely most powerful, but it's also going to cost you a bit, right? It's going to cost you 2 cents per 1000 tokens. This is only going to cost you 0.0004. So you have to sort of make the trade-off there. If you feel like you couldn't be bothered by all of that because you're in a really good spot right now, then yeah, go ahead, I guess, default everything to DaVinci. And the same goes for the one at the bottom, and you can also, again, you can compare the training to usage. Mostly you're going to be using usage. And the image model, we're also going to run one of the image model just to see how it looks like. And these are the different resolutions. I'm going to be using the one in the middle because I think it's just the right spot. It's not very high res, but also it's good enough, right, that I can actually use it meaningfully. Right, so this is going to cost you 0.018 per image. Again, it's a lot cheaper than to hire a graphic designer to whip out something if that something is very clearly defined. All right, and we're also going to be using the audio models. So this is going to be using the Whisper. Whisper can transcript speech into text and translate many languages into English. Just to make things a little bit trickier for it, sometimes I'm going to be using English, and some other times I'm actually going to write my prompt in German, and see if it could pick that up and still generate the right image or complete the right sentences for me. Alright, so these are the kind of things that we're going to be doing just to make a note on the pricing, on the cost, and to explain why most of my experiment I'm going to use the Ada or the Babbage. But for you, if you feel like, hey, look, you're not in a position to penny pinch, then I guess, that to default everything to DaVinci. Alright. Okay, now that you know it works and you already have an idea of the pricing, then I'll show you a quick usage pattern, alright? The simplest usage pattern for specifying your model. So I'm going to clear out my screen now. I already do a models list. I can see, okay, just to remind you again, this is what we did earlier. And models.list is just going to list you all the models that are available to you, and you could take a look at each one of them. You could see the name, the root, the ID that you want to specify, alright? But now that you know it works, let's go ahead and just create a simple prompt, alright? I'm going to create a simple one called completions.create. So this is my prompt. This is the simplest usage pattern for specifying a model. So what you have here is a -m, that is the name of the model. This -m right here stands for model, so I'm saying that I want to use the Babbage model. You can lower your cost furthermore by just changing Babbage to Ada and see, if the prompt is reasonably performant. Now the -p stands for prompt, so this is my prompt. So I'm putting the model and then followed by a -p stands for prompt and then putting in my prompt. So let's run that. Okay, this is a bit wild, but it says Steve Jobs is a transsexual African-American drug kingpin immortalized in the best biopics ever made. Okay, that's really wild. You could try and say, what about if you want the max tokens to be a bit longer? So for example, I have DaVinci is up, but I actually wanted to generate more, so I could actually specify the max tokens and I could up that to maybe 100. So that's gonna generate as many, text all the way up to 100 tokens. And I can also set the temperature to be a little bit higher. So this is just a case of, I'm writing some poetry. I don't need to be precise. I could let it to be a bit more creative. So I could set the temperature to be a bit higher, something like 0.9. And let's run that. It didn't know whether I'm referring DaVinci to as a person or as a historical event, maybe a name of a book, name of a novel. It doesn't know that. So here it says Da Vinci is a fight to the death between Leonardo da Vinci and Francesco de Helone. The meet-up takes place at the Villa d'Este in Rome. Leonardo takes the fight to the floor and lands a significant blow on Francesco, but at the end of the match, Leonardo is the only one standing. Strong arguments are made about whether this win actually occurred. A debate then ensues about the truth, and each of the partners engage in there. And of course, it didn't complete it because by this point, it already maxes out at the 100 tokens, so that's why it stops. And you can, of course, try and do a couple of things. You can say, what about like Bill Gates, right? Is a, and this time just to show you when I don't use the Babbage and I use the Ada model. Let's see what it will generate for us. 100, I'm going to change that to 50. Okay, Bill Gates is a well-known investor, a good friend of the family, yes, but also an unspoken critic of Donald Trump and did not vote for him. But Trump and Gates were involved in two different classes of discussions concerning intelligence figures that, again, it incomplete. A maximum token of 50, so if it maxed out at 50, even though the story is interesting and we would like to find out what happened between the discussions, I'm afraid we don't get that because it maxes out at 50. Alright, so you could set this to be a little bit higher because this is an Ada model. It's not going to be that expensive. Ada is quite cheap. Babbage is quite cheap. Alright, and then the T temperature, a higher temperature, give it a bit more randomness. The response may seem a bit more varied, maybe a bit more random. And then if you want things to be a bit more defined, a bit more conservative, then change the temperature to be a bit lower, maybe 0.1, maybe 0. Or one other thing you can do is the -n as well. So -n stands for the n sample, so how many do you want to generate? So for example, I could put a space 5 and it would generate 5 different completions from me. Our customer support service is available, and I'm going to put this to 3 instead of 5 and just run that. Now it's going to generate 3 of them to me. Okay, so let's see the first one, completion. Our customer support service is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. With the help of our technical experts, we respond to all customer service queries and we are experts in answering your questions on the here. Generally, we have enough resources, so okay, that's it, blah, blah, blah. Our customer support service is available through the website. And I give you some random website. Don't know where they got from, but markets innovative products to the full spectrum. And then the last one, our customer support service is available 24/7 to assist you with all your online reservation inquiries. For questions pertaining to this deal, please call the operators. and then give you some random Twitter as well. So all of them are quite believable, quite realistic. You can think of them as an auto-responding, or maybe try to just help you write some tickets. So when you're trying to write this ticket, I'll be trying to just complete the ticket for you, so your customer support agent can reply to more customer support tickets in about the same time, right? So this could be quite useful in that kind of situations. And you can generate 3 of them, and then your customer service agent, when it's prompted with 3, it can pick the most appropriate one, and you just have to change this to your own name. So I can just click on that, pick that one, and then change this to my website, which is supertype.ai, and I can change the Twitter, and I guess the Twitter would just be our own Twitter. I don't think we have a Twitter account, but if we do, can change that. So give you some templates and you pick from them. That's very fair, that's very reasonable. Now what's also interesting is that you can use this command line tool, this CLI, to interface with OpenAI's other products such as the Dall-E API. So right from within the terminal, if I'm writing a blog article about some German philosophers, and I want to generate maybe 1 or 2 cover images to go on top of the article, I can do that right from the terminal. So let me clear the screen, and you can do OpenAI API image.create. Alright, to make things a little bit more interesting, I'm gonna try and use a bit of German prompts here as well to sort of interface maybe a bit of German, a bit of English, just to confuse it a bit and see whether it could do a reasonable job at that. So for example, I want to say a snail. Eine Schnecke, that's a snail. Ein Huhn und a Junge, that's a boy. Or if you want to be more specific, you can change this to student, maybe Schüler, and you can then say, I want this to be a comic style. So eine Schnecke, ein Huhn und ein Schüler. That would basically, actually you want to maybe just change this to ein Schüler. So that would just say that it's a boy. So eine Schnecke, ein Huhn and ein Schüler. Let's see how it generates that. I hope the comic looks good, so let's see. Alright, it's done. It gives you this URL. Later on when we write our script out, I'm gonna use the web browser. I'm gonna do an import web browser, and then I'm gonna use the web browser to open this up for me. But right now I don't have that because I'm using the terminal, right? So I'm just gonna have to copy this. It's gonna ask me if I want to open that. I'm gonna say yes, open, and I have it. So I have the snail, but it didn't give me the dog. It's either my German is messed up or it didn't understand me, but I asked for a snail, a dog, and a boy, or a student. Well, this looks like a student to me, but where's the dog, right? So there's the snail. Then I think this is good. If I'm writing a novel or something and I just want something really quick and easy to slap on top, maybe becoming my book cover, then or maybe just illustrate some of the paragraphs so that to intersperse it with a bit of images, with my text, writing a nice simple poem. This works, honestly. This works. I'm not gonna be too picky. I'm not gonna complain too much. I'll take this, accept it, alright? And it does all of this in how many, I don't know, like 1 second? It's really, really fast. And it's also really more affordable, something that I can afford rather than having to spend 6 hours trying to figure out how to illustrate this paragraph of text. Now what I also like is that you can specify the number of samples to be generated, and it's really quite fast. So a URL is generated for each of the images and you can just click on it. So let me show you how. I'm just going to press up, go back to the last one. That's the eine Schnecke. I'm going to remove that. I'm just going to say ein Huhn und ein Schüler, comic style. And this time I'm going to put -n, and I want to generate 2 images. Okay, so this is again, I'm using the -p, that's my prompt, and then -n is how many do I want? I want 2 of them. Just to change things up, I already have the comic style, I like that, but let's say I'm writing a paragraph, I'm trying to write a book, and my book is a little bit, maybe a throwback to the 60s, 70s. I want a bit of a retro style. I want a bit of a retro cartoon style. Alright, so let's just see if it knows what I'm getting at here. Very subtle, but let's see. Hopefully it comes up with some good images. So it gave me 2 images. I'm going to click on the first one, and then I'm going to click on the second one, both of them. So this was the first image with a snail. Now my prompt is different. My prompt is ein Huhn und ein Schüler, retro cartoon style. So I want to have a dog somewhere. I want to have a student somewhere. So let's take a look at the first one. That's a dog and a student, and that is a bit of a, it kind of have the retro cartoon style, if I'm honest, right? You don't see comics, you don't see this kind of cartoons anymore. This reminds you of when you're 5, when you're 10. Giving away my age here, I'm 34. Let's take a look at the second image it generates. This is the second one. Again, yeah, it looks really, it's very nostalgic, I would say. Very nostalgic. It has a bit of that rough paint strokes, a bit of even the color palette. I mean, look at the colors that it picks, very rough edges as well. So you could see that this is really, I asked for a retro cartoon, and I think I'm really getting this off from you know, the style of even the cloud. Look at the cloud, right? The general aesthetics of the image. This is always random. If you try to run this on your own computer and you specify the same prompt, you may expect to get very different results, okay? But generally speaking, it does give you that retro vibe, doesn't it? So doing these exercises with just like one of command prompts directly in the terminal, they really fun, really cool. And I can see that if you're just trying to get a few images to use it for your own materials, marketing materials, or trying to generate something to accompany your concept, you know, put this in the, I can send this to my editor and say, hey, when I write the book and stuff, these are the few images that I'm looking for. Hire a proper artist to clean it up and to generate something, but I could express them in prompt and it would just get some rough draft and send it to a professional graphic designer or book cover artist, illustrator, someone to go and improve on it. And so this is cool. But doing these exercises with just like in the command prompt, it's not always what you want as well. Sometimes it's great for a lot of things, right? If you write an article, you want some images to go along with it, you want a quick video description to post this video online, you could prompt an interface with GPT-3 and say, hey, generate this video description for me so that I can post this on YouTube. It doesn't get any easier than that. But if I want to flesh this out, I want to use it with LangChain, I want to chain it with some automation or some other processes on your computer using like sub-process, then you want it in a Python script. So let's see how that looks like. Now I'll open up the text file that we created. I already have a web browser. I know I need that because I'm going to use the same prompt, some of them. But I'm going to also have this automation directly. I'm going to say, use my web browser and just open that for me so I don't even have to touch the mouse. All right. We're going to have to bring in a few things. We're going to bring in OpenAI as well. Import OpenAI. I know that I will need to bring in my keys. So might as well do that from .env import load.env. And then just go ahead and straight away just do load that .env. That has the same effect of just looking at your .env file and find all the key values pair and just bring them in. I will also add a bonus for you guys here by bringing in an audio file. So I have the audio file. I don't actually have that. So let me go ahead and just create a new file, new folder. I'm going to call it audio. Then in that, I'm going to drag and drop, put this into the audio file. So I have an MP3 file there. I want it to transcribe. Okay, so let's say I work in a corporate job and I have a lot of meetings, and every meetings I need to transcribe the meetings and stuff. Then I could just show you how to do it right here, save you a lot of time. And then you have tasks like going from audio to text, which is quite common, fairly common. And if we can automate it and have it done in seconds, man, that's a game changer in productivity right there. So let's see how all of that looks like. Now remember the first task we did was that we list all the models. In the CLI, we know how to do that, but what about code? How do we do that in code? So to do that, you call models and you say OpenAI, then you call model and you call list. Now if I only want to take the first one, and remember each one of them has multiple key value pairs. This is kind of like a dictionary, a Python dictionary or a JavaScript object, JSON object. You can see this is the created key, and then this is value ID object. But each one of them always have a root. Okay, all of them has a root. So I could just print out the root. I could maybe print the first one. I could say take this, look at the data, take only the first one and look only at the root, and I know I will see them, right? Because this is the root. So that's the first thing I'm gonna print. Next thing we did was we generate some auto completion. We generate some text completion, right? So you could say create our completion. Let's say have a completion here, and we say OpenAI.completion. There is completion and there's chat completion. If you want to create like a chat interface, you want to chat with it, you should use that. But I'm going to just say completion. And again, I want to use add just because it's cheap. And also we're in a recession right now, may I remind you. And then we want to pass in our prompt. Prompt is going to be quite simple. I'm just going to use the same prompt even. I'm going to say Bill Gates is a, and that's it. Of course, you have all the other things. You want to add the token, you want to say more tokens and stuff. That's up to you. You can do that. And I'm going to just print completion. It's going to give you all the choices. It's going to take the first one, kind of like what I did above, and I just want to take the text, and that's the second one. And now let's use image generation with Dall-E. So with image generation, let's call it image gen, and I want to say OpenAI.image.create. Okay, so notice that up here I'm using the .completion, here I'm using OpenAI.image. And again, you want to pass in a prompt. So let's give it a prompt. You could write in English. Honestly, I want to just maybe add a bit of difficulty because otherwise it'd be too simple. So we're going to use German for this. But really what it means here is two dogs playing under a tree, for example. Okay, so two dogs playing under a tree, and I want it to be in cartoon style. So zwei Hunde spielen unter einem Baum, and I say I want it to be a cartoon style, right? So this is two dogs playing a Spiel, so spielen under, and this is ein is just one, so einem Baum is one tree, under, and then spielen, and zwei is two, Hunde is two dogs, okay? So two dogs playing under a tree. I want it to be in cartoon, and I want it to generate two images for me. And remember the sizes that I talked about earlier? I said you could, if you look at the pricing page, you can pick a size, and of course the bigger size will cost you more money. And I'll say I want to pick somewhere like a middle, just nice. So I would have 512 times 512. In Hund und in Schüler retro cartoon style, say two images, it would give me this dictionary, and in there is the data. So this is the created. I don't need the created. Who cares about that? I'm going to look at the data. So I want to say for image in image gen data, and that is going to look at this, and it's going to say, okay, this is the first one, and then this is the second one, and each one of them has a key called URL. So I want to go into that key, and I would say web browser, take my web browser and open that in new tab. And what do I open? The URL. So this is gonna look through the data, and because there are two of them, and why do I have two? Because I put n equals to 2, and for each one of them, takes the URL and then open that in a new tab. And let's do the third example. For this, I'm gonna be using this keynote address by Dr. Donda West. This is Gwendolyn Brooks Writers Conference keynote address. Okay, and I'm gonna just make a remark. This is actually by Dr. Donda West. Okay, this is an audio recording of that. So I'm gonna pass it this donda.mp3, and I want it to transcribe for me. So you can think of it as an actual meeting happening, and let's say I'm the secretary, or let's say I'm asked to go in and transcribe all of this meeting. Now I don't want to be doing that by hand. It's going to take a lot of my time. I'm going to have to play, stop, record, and then write that out. It's going to take too much time. Or maybe in the court proceedings, for example. So I want to use OpenAI to do that. So I'm going to say audio, this is the name of the folder, and look for the donda.mp3. So let's do that. Read that in binary mode, so read binary. Then I want this to be a transcript, and that would just be OpenAI.audio.transcript, and I want to use the Whisper 1 model. Again, you can go and look at the pricing page, pick one that you want. I'm just gonna keep everything simple, and I just said, okay, this is the file, so pass the file in there, and then transcript with Whisper 1. Finally, print out everything. So let's save all of that. Get in here and let's clear the screen. Let's say python-i demo10.py, and sure enough it's done. So let's take a look at the first print statement. So the first print statement is gonna say, okay, this is the first model because data 0, and then the root, that's Babbage. Okay, and then Bill Gates is a worldwide CEO. The statement was in response to a but because we didn't specify the max token length, so it just stops there. The default is usually really too short. Usually you just want to specify the max, and it's kind of like what I showed you earlier, so get a much bigger sentence. The third one is basically opening an existing browser session, so that opens up in my browser, and if I move over to my browser, you will see my two dogs playing under a tree. That's the image for it, right? Zwei Hunde spielen unter einem Baum. And I said I want it to be a cartoon style, and it generates a cartoon style. This is actually really good. It's almost professional quality, if I may say so, right? Let's take a look at the second image that it generates. This is also two dogs playing under a tree. This is also a bit more cartoonish. I mean, notice the dog doesn't even have the same color. It's more imaginative, more creative, but still it's a pretty good looking art, I would say. Alright, so this is the first image. Second image, which one do I like better? This one has a bit more cartoonish feel to it. It definitely looks more creative. This one looks more artistic. It looks more professionally done. You know, the trees looks more, it has that shading, you know, and I think it just looks great. Okay, this is from future me. When I'm editing this video, I realized that I did not go into the transcript example, so I recorded this from a future timeline, and I edited that back in here during post-edit. So the audio transcript, right, it opens up donda.mp3. I included this on GitHub as well. If you don't have any mp3 to work with, feel free to just go to GitHub and just clone this repo down, all of the examples from the beginning of this series, this is a very long running series, right? All of that is in its own file, so demo 2, demo 3, demo 4, all of that is in there. They just name more sensibly, so go and look for that, do a git clone, and you'll be able to follow the example and get all the data sets here. So this one, if you were to play this,
that she wrote, speech to the young, speech to the progress toward.
So I can't even fully play all of that because I think it may run into copyright issue if I play too much of too lengthy of a segment. So I can only play you the first 5-10 seconds, but that gives you enough of an indication of what kind of audio you're trying to transcribe. And here is the text. It gave you the that she wrote, speech to the young, speech to the progress toward, say to them, say to the downkeepers, the sun slappers, the self-swallowers, the harmony harshers. Even if you're not ready for the day, you cannot always be night. Alright, so that basically is the transcription of this MP3. You can play it yourself and try and validate and see that this is actually done quite well. Enough from future me, back to the present me. Sorry for that. Now if we take a look at the source code for LangChain, so you've been using the LangChain Python library. Now if you take a look under the hood, you see that import OpenAI being used a couple of times. In fact, if you were to just search for OpenAI itself, you see it being used a couple of places. Base OpenAI, if you click on that, you will see that there's a few patterns here. For example, this is OpenAI .chat completion. Now that looks familiar, doesn't it? Because we actually just went ahead and used OpenAI .completion. Things like LlamaIndex, things like LangChain, they build on top of all of this. But deep down, they just write all of this wrapper for you, so you don't have to go and write this manually, and it gives you some sensible default. It adds some typing for you, it adds some agent just to help you elevate your productivity, right? And I feel like that brings us to the end of this video. I just thought of doing this one video specifically for the OpenAI Python library, since I sometimes got emails that ask if they should be using this instead of LangChain, and I thought I'll make it clear that LangChain itself, when you use the OpenAI class, is basically calling all of these functions under the hood. And if you already installed LangChain, then OpenAI as a dependency is also already installed for you, so you can use it directly from the command line, or you can use it in your Python scripts. And having something like this in your repertoire is really quite powerful and could be a massive time saver for you. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.